there starts to be a message of hope that comes. What better person to write about a message of hope than someone sitting in the false king's? He's right in the middle of the false king's palace. And Daniel has visions, and that's why Daniel is chosen in that. Where he's sitting, he's going to prophesy hope about the new king that's coming. It's always going to come through the line of David. God promised that way, way, way back. That was the first king of theirs that he got to pick himself. And then you've got this vision in Daniel chapter 9 that one like the Son of Man is going to take the throne. Going to take the throne. That's the ascension. The ascension is not Jesus floating off to heaven. And sometime probably in the next couple of years at least, we're going to watch a coronation of a king, right, in this world. Are there such things today? Yeah. Queen Elizabeth's not getting any younger. And so some of us can probably remember seeing many, 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 many years ago. Probably some of you when you were little children might have seen either clips or watched on television the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. Sometime in the next couple of years, we're going to see the coronation of King Charles. That's the ascension.
Tommy.
Yeah.
This is John Ford. It's not a quick question. It's got plenty of back. Now,
Good.
You were talking, and I must admit my hell knowledge is not that great.
Good.
Yeah. I thought about hell some, and what are the specific passages that talk about actual people, like the lost, what hell is going to look like to them? Now, like my vision of hell is not so much that I'm like going to burn in hell, but like I won't be able to be with God, which is sort of that separation is a hell. Now, is that a misunderstanding?
No, I think that's a better understanding than sitting, burning, roasting all the time. That's a better biblical understanding.
Okay.
But yeah, the metaphor in the Bible for it is fire. That's definitely true. But there's also more to fire in the Bible than just burning and roasting people. So yeah, if you'll zoom in next week, that's what we're going to talk about next week, because I'm going to bring the biblical passages that talk about all that. That talk about heaven, where we go, and hell, and all that kind of stuff. Can you wait till next week?
Thank you for, answering.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you've got in the crucifixion, the resurrection, and the ascension, you've got Jesus taking the throne. God retaking the throne. Exodus 15. I am king. He's the king. He's our king. God has retaken the throne. Now king. The ascension is his coronation as king. And what does it say in Revelation? He's been found worthy. Been tried and found worthy. And he's the one. Humbled himself, Paul says, therefore God has highly exalted him on the throne. Then there's that passage, and we'll talk about it next week, that when the end comes, Jesus will deliver the kingdom back to his Father. That's weird language to me. He's got it now. This time that we're on earth, and there's the way that everybody talks about it, by the way, is already but not yet. Okay, it's already happened. We're over there. We're in the new life, but not yet, because we're still in this old life, And while during this time, Jesus has got everything in his hands. And then the Bible says he's going to deliver it back to the Father. And definitely Revelation 21 and 22, David, correct me if I'm missing a passage, depicts it as God the Father he's the center of it all. He's the center of it all. That and for Jesus to have everything right now. Because he's been here living. He's been here, he's had nails driven through his hands and feet. He's suffered and bled. And when we cry out, he says, I know. Yeah. Bobby Lynn, you were about to say something.
So,
Uh-huh.
we've always said the Bible is about temple. And the temple is where heaven and earth intersect, where God is. So, from some from the book and from what you said tonight, my takeaway is that for me, what I need to learn to do is to replace the word temple and just say God's presence.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, then you're like, oh, that's where I want him to be. And that's the whole key. If you're not in God's presence, then you're separated. And you don't want that.
Yeah.
And that's a very simplified kind of takeaway that's finally gotten driven in my head now. And I'm like, oh, temple is God's presence. And that's what we want. And so all those things, your baptism, your death, burial, resurrection, ascension, it's all about that presence. And then that makes it should make a whole difference in the way we live our day to day.
Yeah.
Because we're like, oh, not only am I in God's presence, but I'm carrying that presence
Yeah.
into this dark place.
Yeah.
And so it should make a difference.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's come here and teach. Because that's a great way to say it, that we're in the presence of God. I mean, the story of the Bible is that God intended to make an entire world filled with his presence. Humans said, no thank you, we'll make a world of our own presence. And he started, by the way, and here's how he did it. This is another thing we got to remember in the biblical story. The whole world is supposed to be a temple. It's supposed to be where earth and heaven connect. And so he began in a spot. He told humans, I've given you everything you need. Stay plugged into me and go do it. You go make it. Okay? The creation story is very unfinished in Genesis. We're supposed to go make it. But instead, we got a different place to get our authority, mainly ourselves, and we went out and made a world that looked very different than it was supposed to. So God, this is a very simplistic thing, last thing we'll say, God made a spot. Okay, let's start with a spot. Not the whole world. The prophets say the earth will be filled again with the glory of God. It's not now. We're going to start with a spot, the temple, and I'm going to give you a land. I'm going to give you an Eden. And here's going to be the garden, the tabernacle and the temple in that land. And we're going to start there. And what were the Israelites supposed to be? A light to the nations. Go out and spread this. Go out and do this. They didn't do that. And so Jesus did all that. He became Israel. He became the priest. He became the temple. Jesus had to do it all. He had to be everything. And there's a lot you have to think through that. With the purpose of, you guys go out and do that. In the simplest terms, that's the church. We now are in that spot. We've been given a land, a community of people that have this life together, And we're supposed to go out and do it. And tell the world the good news that the whole earth is going to be filled with the glory of God. But what does that look like? Just watch us. That's what it looks like. Well, where did you get? We got it from Jesus. That's in the simplest terms what we're supposed to be about. We just watch him. We do what he did. We have the same life he had on this earth, and now we go out and spread it. But one day, God's going to speed up the process and push everything that's not him outside. And that's really hell. If this is the whole earth filled with the glory of God, then hell's out there in the parking lot. It's been pushed out. Okay? Those who today can say, you know, I want to live my life in this world and not give God the glory. Well, right now, today they can, right? And they can beat us up and persecute us if they want to, and that doesn't matter. We're supposed to act a certain way and do a certain thing. But eventually, God's just going to say, you're excused to go be what you want to be. But I won't be there. So it's the absence of God, complete absence of God, and it's out there. But the Bible has images, and the images come from Jesus' day, and the images come from the Old Testament. The images of hell in the New Testament come from the Old Testament. So we'll look at that next week. I hope that'll be helpful. And we won't spend as much time on hell as we will on heaven. Hell's not really for us. You know, it's real, and it's going to happen. And we got to do something with Jesus' words. Many people will find the broad road, and a few people will find the narrow road. You know, if you were to listen to our culture, who goes to heaven? Everybody. Everybody does. You know? And that's just not what the Bible says. That's not what it says. So, yeah. Man, I hope this was helpful. I know we were a little, but this was a discussion. Thank you all for your input. And like I said, next week we'll talk about heaven, hell, where we go after we die, all those kinds of things. And I'll bring you a handout of, and go ahead and give it to you next week while we're doing it, instead of waiting until I give you the final notes on it. I'll give you a handout. And then in 2 weeks, we start Romans as worldview. Okay, let's go look at a New Testament book, and let's see how this all, because that's the best place to go. And by the way, I just got to say this. I was going to say it. This is how Paul writes Romans, by the way. He uses creation, and he uses the Exodus story to make his argument in Romans, to tell the story in Romans. So in Romans 6, you've got through the water, baptism, right? In Romans 7, you've got the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. In Romans 8, you've got the presence of God, the Spirit. That's what happened at Mount Sinai. They came through the water, they got the law, God's Spirit, God's presence came to them. And so Paul makes his argument in Romans by retelling the Exodus story, by retelling it, and reframing it into Jesus. You know, and at the end of near the end of Romans 8, he says, "When we cry, Abba, Father," who in that term is? Where did Jesus cry, Abba, Father? In the garden. Not my will, but your will be done. Paul says in Romans 8, you are going to have to be in a place crying out, "Father, is there any other way to do this? But not my will, but your will be done." And it's in the midst of suffering. The world is suffering. Creation is suffering and groaning. That's Romans 8. And where are we? We're in the garden, agonizing with the Spirit. Because we're in the middle of it, giving our lives, sacrificing, following Jesus, denying ourselves, picking up a cross, and we have that very real human emotion of, do I have to do this? Is there any other way to do this? I mean, it's such a beautiful chapter and a beautiful thought. And he said, but who's there with us? Just like who was there with Jesus? The Spirit is there. And we can't even put into words how bad it is. And we can't even put into words how wrecked it is. But what's the Spirit doing? Putting it into words. Putting it into words. And since that same Spirit is in us, what is he doing? Putting those words into actions. It's just powerful. So that's how Paul is able to say at the end of Romans 8, who in the world could separate us from the love of Christ? If this is our reality, who can separate us from the love of Christ? We'll look at all that more deeply. But that's all told in the Exodus. It's all told in Exodus language. Coming through the water, getting the law, the presence of God in the tabernacle is what he says. So anyway, thank you all. If you didn't get a notebook with the final notes, if you just needed to get tonight's packet, make sure you get that. If you didn't, if you need anything, let me know. Thank you all very much. Thank you all on Zoom. Hey, thanks for that awesome